Magic Treehouse, Book Number 33, A Merlin Mission, Carnival at Candlelight, by Mary Pope Osborne. Chapter 1, A Book of Magic. Dawn was breaking in the Frog Creek woods. Jack saw a light shining up ahead. He ran toward it. He ran so fast he couldn't hear his feet hitting the ground. He couldn't feel the frosty winter air. As Jack got closer to the light, he could see the magic treehouse at the top of the tallest oak. A girl and boy were looking out the window. The girl had dark wavy hair and sea blue eyes. The boy had tousled red hair and a big grin on his face. As the two kids waved at him, Jack felt incredibly happy. "Jack, wake up!" Jack opened his eyes. His sister Annie was standing beside his bed. She was wearing her winter jacket. It was barely light outside. "I just had a dream about the treehouse," she said. "Really?" Jack said sleepily. "I dreamed we were running through the woods at dawn," said Annie. "And when we got to the treehouse, Teddy and Kathleen were there, waiting for us." Jack sat up. "I just had the same dream," he said. "Meet you downstairs," said Annie. Annie left Jack's room. Jack jumped out of bed, put on his glasses, and threw on his clothes. He grabbed his winter jacket and his backpack. Then he slipped quietly down the stairs and out the front door. Annie was waiting on the porch. The February air was chilly. Frost sparkled in the grass as the sun rose over the Frog Creek woods. "Ready?" asked Annie. Jack nodded and zipped his jacket. Without another word, he and Annie hurried up their street and headed into the woods. They ran through long shadows of early morning between the bare winter trees. Then they stopped. The treehouse was back, just as Jack had seen it in his dream. It was high in the tallest oak tree, shining in the cold morning light. "Wow!" breathed Jack. "Dreams can come true." "Yep," said Annie. "Teddy, Kathleen." No one answered. "I guess only part of this dream came true," Annie said sadly. She grabbed the rope ladder and started up. Jack followed. Annie climbed into the treehouse. "Oh, wow!" she said. "What is it?" said Jack. "They're here," said Annie in a loud whisper. Jack climbed in behind her. Their friends Ted and Kathleen, apprentices to Morgan Le Fay, were sitting under the treehouse window. Wrapped in heavy woolen cloaks, they were both fast asleep. "Hey, sleepyheads," said Annie. "Wake up!" Kathleen blinked and yawned. Teddy rubbed his eyes. When he saw Jack and Annie, he gave them a wide grin and leapt to his feet. "Hello," he said. "Hello," cried Annie. She threw her arms around Teddy. "We both dreamed you were here." "Ah, then our magic worked," said Teddy. "Kathleen suggested we send dreams to let you know we were here, and it seems our magic sent us to Dreamland as well." "But now we are all awake," said Kathleen, "and I am very glad to see you." She stood up, drawing her cloak around her. Her blue eyes sparkled like seawater in the dawnlight. "I'm glad to see you, too," Jack said shyly. "Are you taking us on another Merlin mission?" said Annie. "Not exactly," said Teddy. "Merlin has the most important mission for you, but this time we will not be going along." "Oh, no," said Annie. "What if we need your magic to help us?" Ted and Kathleen looked at each other and smiled. Then Kathleen turned back to Jack and Annie. "Morgan thinks you may be ready to use magic on your own," she said. "Really?" said Jack. "Yes," said Teddy, "but Merlin is very cautious about sharing magic powers with mortals, even with two as worthy as you. He is also wary of magic being used outside the realm of Camelot. Nevertheless, Morgan has convinced Merlin to let you prove yourselves. You will be tested on 4 missions." "But we don't know any magic," said Jack. "Remember what I told you on our last adventure?" said Teddy. "If we all work together, anything is possible," said Annie. "But you just said you weren't coming with us." "That is true," said Kathleen, "and that is why we bring you this." She reached into a pocket of her cloak and pulled out a small handmade book. She gave the book to Annie. The cover of the book was made of rough brown paper. Written on it in neat, simple handwriting was the title, 10 Magic Rhymes for Annie and Jack from Teddy and Kathleen. "You made this for us?" said Annie. "Yes," said Kathleen. "One line of each rhyme is in Teddy's language, and one is in mine, the language of the Seal people." Annie opened the book to the table of contents. She and Jack skimmed the list of rhymes, and Jack read some of the entries aloud. Fly through the air, make metal soft, turn into ducks. Annie giggled. These are so cool, she said. Let's all turn into ducks. Not now, said Kathleen. You must use these rhymes very sparingly. There are only 10 rhymes in the book, and each can only be used once. They are meant to last you for 4 journeys. 4, said Jack. Aye, said Teddy. Merlin has agreed that if you can use our magic wisely on 4 missions, he will teach you the secrets that will allow you to make magic on your own. Oh boy, said Annie. Jack put the book of magic rhymes in his backpack. So where are we going on our first mission? He asked. This research book from Morgan will tell you, said Teddy. He took out a book and handed it to Jack. The cover showed a bright, colorful city surrounded by water. Jack read the title aloud. A Visit to Venice, Italy. I've heard of Venice, said Annie. Last year, Aunt Gail and Uncle Michael went there on vacation. Aye, 'tis a city that has long welcomed travelers, said Teddy. But you and Jack will travel to the Venice of 260 years ago. What will we do there? Asked Jack. Merlin has prepared careful directions for you, said Teddy. He pulled a letter out of a pocket in his cloak and gave it to Jack. Read this when you get to Venice. Okay, said Jack. He put Merlin's letter and Morgan's research book into his backpack. Wait a minute, said Annie. If we take the treehouse to Venice, how will you guys get back to Camelot? Teddy and Kathleen smiled and held out their hands. They each wore a ring made of pale blue glass. These magic rings belong to Morgan, said Kathleen. They will take us home. Remember, Teddy said to Jack and Danny, follow Merlin's directions carefully. If you prove yourselves to be wise and brave helpers, he will call for you again soon. Kathleen nodded. Goodbye now, she said to Jack and Danny. Good luck. Kathleen and Teddy raised their glass rings to their lips. Together they whispered words too softly to be heard, then blew on the rings. Before Jack and Danny's eyes, the 2 young sorcerers began to fade into the cool morning air. In an instant, they had disappeared completely. They're gone, breathed Jack. I guess it's time for us to go too, said Annie. Jack took a deep breath. Then he pointed at the cover of the Venus book. I wish we could go there, he said. The wind started to blow. The treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. Chapter 2. Carnival. Annie laughed. Jack opened his eyes. He and Annie were wearing purple and pink outfits with huge ruffled collars. On their heads were funny hats. On their feet were red slippers with big bows. Who are we? Annie asked. I don't know, said Jack. He didn't feel like a wise and brave helper in his red slippers. He felt stupid. Together, Jack and Danny looked out the treehouse window. They had landed in a small tree inside a walled garden. The sky was gray. Jack couldn't tell if it was morning or evening, but the air felt damp and heavy, as if a storm was about to break. I guess this is Venus, he said. Let's check her book, said Annie. She opened their research book and read aloud. Today, the city of Venice is one of the most popular tourist spots in the world. It lies in the lagoon of the Adriatic Sea. Instead of roads, Venice has waterways called canals. People glide along the canals in shallow boats called gondolas. A man called a gondolier stands in the back of the boat and uses a long oar to propel the gondola through the water. That sounds like fun, said Jack. Yep, said Annie. She closed the book. Let's go. Wait, said Jack. We don't even know what our mission is yet. He took Merlin's letter and unfolded it. He read aloud. Dear Jack and Danny of Frog Creek, your mission will require great patience and a bit of magic. The Grand Lady of the Lagoon is in terrible danger. The only one who can help you save her from disaster is the ruler of the seas. To locate him, follow these directions. When water rises beneath the moon, visit the Grand Lady of the Lagoon. To find out where you need to go, seek out a painter named Tiepolo. At midnight, 2 men will tell you the time. To the top of their tower, hurry and climb. The king of the jungle will carry you there, not over land, but high in the air. An angel of gold will show you the way to sea by night and home by day. M. Jack pushed his glasses into place. He said. I wonder who the grand lady is, said Annie, and why do we need to save her? I'm wondering lots of stuff, said Jack. What about the king of the jungle? We're in a city, not a jungle. And what about that angel? And let's just take one thing at a time, said Annie. What are we supposed to do first? Jack looked back at the letter and read, When waters rise beneath the moon, visit the grand lady of the lagoon. So let's start by finding the grand lady, said Annie. She headed down the treehouse ladder. Jack put Merlin's letter into his backpack along with Morgan's research book and Teddy and Kathleen's book of magic rhymes. Then he climbed down the rope ladder and caught up with Annie. Jack and Annie walked over a pebbly path as the sky darkened. Good, thought Jack. It's night. He didn't want anyone to see him and his silly outfit, especially the red slippers with the bows. That must be the way out, said Annie. She led Jack to a wooden gate in the garden wall and pushed it open. Jack and Annie stepped through the gate onto a quiet, empty walkway. Next to the walkway was a narrow lane of water. I guess that's a canal, said Jack. And that must be a gondola, said Annie. She pointed to a long, curved black boat rounding the corner. In the last light of day, the gondola was gliding silently up the canal toward them. Yikes, whispered Annie. There were 2 people in the boat, a gondolier and a passenger. Each wore a black cloak, white gloves, and a ghostly white mask. The masks had long pointy noses shaped like bird beaks. The passenger sat in the middle of the boat, holding a lantern. The gondolier stood in the back, pushing a long oar through the water. They look a lot weirder than us, said Annie. No kidding, said Jack. Hello, the passenger shouted. The person's voice was muffled behind the white mask. Do you need help? Yes, Annie shouted back. Can you take us to the grand lady of the lagoon? Yes, of course. She's back that way, answered the masked passenger. Come. Great, said Annie. She grabbed Jack's hand and pulled him over to the gondola. The gondola rocked a bit as she and Jack climbed aboard and took seats between the gondolier and the passenger. The gondolier pushed the gondola away from the landing. His long oar made soft splashes in the water as the boat moved up the canal. Jack cleared his throat. Excuse me, he said. Why are you wearing bird masks? For Carnival, of course, said the passenger. That is why you are wearing clown costumes, no? Oh, yeah, sure, said Jack. As the gondola slid through the canal, Jack snuck their research book out of his backpack. Oh, boy, a carnival, Annie whispered to Jack. I hope it has a roller coaster. I don't think they had roller coasters 260 years ago, whispered Jack. Jack looked up Carnival in the index. He found the page, then he and Annie silently read together. For many centuries, Carnival has been the most famous yearly festival of Venus. For Carnival, people disguise themselves as anything they want to be. Rich, poor, male, female, young and old, all are equal during Carnival. Look, that's us, whispered Annie. She pointed to a picture of a colorful costume with a white ruffled collar and red slippers with bows. Yeah, that's them, whispered Jack. He pointed to a picture of a person dressed in a black cloak and a white mask with a bird's beak. Jack closed the book and put it away. The gondola people didn't seem so weird anymore, but he still wondered why a grand lady was in terrible danger at Carnival. As the boat glided around a bend, Jack caught his breath. He saw dozens of gondolas rocking on the choppy waters of a wide open canal. They were all decorated with ribbons and flowers. Candlelight from their lanterns danced on the dark rippling water. Look, that must be the carnival over there, said Annie, pointing. In the distance, thousands of candles twinkled along the shoreline. Sounds of laughter, clapping, and shouting floated over the water. Hold on tightly, said the masked person in front of the gondola. The tide is high tonight. As their gondola joined the fleet boats heading toward Carnival, the wind picked up. The waves grew taller. Jack and Danny held on to the sides of the boat. Jack heard a faint rumble of faraway thunder. He saw a zigzag flash of lightning in the distant sky. Is the storm coming? He wondered nervously. Is the storm part of the disaster that's going to happen to the Grand Lady of the Lagoon? This is going to be fun, isn't it? Said Annie cheerfully. Sure, said Jack. He tried to shake off his worries as the wind and tide helped push the gondola toward the twinkling candles of Carnival. Chapter 3. The Grand Lady of the Lagoon. The gondola glided toward a landing at the edge of the canal. As the gondolier tied up the boat, water was sloshing from the canal onto a wide walkway filled with carnival goers. The gondolier reached a gloved hand toward Annie and helped her out of the boat. He then held out a hand to Jack. When Jack grabbed it, he was surprised that the gondolier's hand felt small under the white glove, like a kid's hand. As soon as Jack had stepped out of the boat, the gondolier untied the rope, pushed off from the landing, and began rowing away. Bye, thanks, called Annie. The two strangers in the white bird masks waved. Jack and Annie watched the gondola disappear over the choppy waters. Then they looked back at the shore. The carnival crowd was parading up and down the wide walkway along the canal. Hey, look, said Annie. There's a bunch of people dressed like us, and like the two people in our gondola. Jack saw lots of black cloaks, bird masks, funny hats, and ruffled collars. He also saw people dressed as chickens, pirates, and knights. None of the costumed people seemed to mind the water spilling over the edge of the canal, soaking their boots and slippers. As Jack and Danny stared at the crowd, a distant bell began to ring. The bell rang 9 times. I guess that means it's 9 o'clock, said Jack. Just then another bell began to chime. Jack counted again. This time 10 chimes rang out. 10? Said Jack, puzzled. So what time is it, 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock? Don't worry about that now, said Annie. I think I see the Grand Lady of the Lagoon. Where? Said Jack. Annie pointed to a tall woman at the edge of the parade. She was wearing a black mask. She wore piles of jewelry, a white wig, and a wide hoop skirt. Jack and Annie moved toward the lady. Excuse me, said Annie. Hi. The lady looked at Annie. Hello, she said in a deep man's voice. Whoa, said Jack, stepping back. Annie laughed. You're a man, she said. Of course, said the man. But for Carnival, I am a very beautiful lady, no? We're looking for somebody called the Grand Lady of, started Annie. But before she could finish, a giant chicken grabbed the man's hand and pulled him away into the crowd. Oh, brother, said Jack, looking around. Lots of people were dressed as grand ladies. How are we supposed to know who to visit? Maybe it's time to use one of Kathleen and Teddy's rhymes, said Annie. No, we should save our rhymes, said Jack. Then let's just skip visiting the Grand Lady of the Lagoon for now, said Annie. What's the next thing Merlin tells us to do? Jack looked at Merlin's directions and read aloud. To find out where you need to go, seek out a painter named Tiapolo. Good, that's clear, said Jack. Let's see if Tiapolo is in our research book. As the noisy crowd celebrated around them, Jack pulled out the book. He stood near a lantern and looked in the index. He's here, said Jack. He turned to the right page and read. Tiapolo was one of the greatest painters of Venice in 17,000s. He painted bright, beautiful oil paintings for palaces and villas. If the guy's so famous, people must know where he lives, said Annie. Excuse me, she called to a clown walking by. Can you tell us where the painter Tiapolo lives? Near the church of St. Felice, the clown said. Thanks, said Annie. But you won't find him home now, the clown called over his shoulder. He's in Merlin, painting. Where's that? Shouted Jack. Over a day's ride on horseback, said the clown. Then he disappeared into the crowd. Said Annie. Do you think Merlin wants us to go to Merlin? We don't have time, said Jack. I think we have to skip Tiapolo, too. Yeah, said Annie. Hey, maybe we should just skip all of this stuff and try to find the ruler of the seas on our own. Our letter says he's the only one who can help us save the Grand Lady. I don't know, said Jack. In his letter, Merlin tells us to be patient, but Annie was already calling to a pirate passing by. Sir, do you know where we can find the ruler of the seas? What? Shouted the pirate. The ruler! Do you know where he lives? yelled Annie. "In the palace on St. Mark's Square," said the pirate. "Where's that?" Annie called, but the pirate had disappeared into the crowd. "I'll look up St. Mark's Square," said Jack. He turned the pages of their book until he came to a map of Venice. "Oh, cool," he said. Jack loved maps. "Okay, let's see," Jack said. "We're here." He pointed to the walkway along the canal on the map. "And we want to go to St. Mark's Square." He pointed to another place on the map. "It's really close." "Yeah, and it looks like everyone else is headed there too," said Annie. "Come on." "So if we go this way," said Jack. He traced their route with his finger. "Come on, Jack," called Annie. Jack looked up from the map. Annie was already walking with the crowd. Jack closed the book and hurried after her. Soon they came to a huge open square. "Wow," Jack said breathlessly. St. Mark's Square was filled with candlelight and musicians. Acrobats balanced on tight ropes. Boxers boxed in a ring. Knights fenced with swords. Clowns walked on tall stilts, raced wheelbarrows, and tried to catch live eels in their mouths. All around the square were candlelit buildings. "Venice is beautiful," said Annie. "Yeah," said Jack. He looked back at their book. He found an illustration of St. Mark's Square. Jack read the descriptions of the buildings. "The watchtower of St. Mark's Square is the tallest building in Venice. The weather vane on top once helped sailors by showing them which way the wind was blowing." Jack looked up. "I can barely see the weather vane out there," he said, "but I think it's pointing north. So the wind must be blowing from the south." "What about the ruler's palace? Where's that?" asked Annie. Jack read on. "The clock tower is one of the most beautiful towers in the world. On top of the tower, a bell struck every hour by—" "Jack, skip to the ruler's palace," interrupted Annie. "Please." Okay, said Jack. He read about the palace. "The Palace of Venice's ruler is one of the most splendid structures ever built. It has a great hall where as many as 2,000 nobles once met to discuss city matters. It also holds the city's grim prison cells. Above the palace door is a sculpture of St. Mark showing a book to a winged lion." "There's the palace door," said Annie. Jack looked up from the map. Annie was heading toward a huge door with a sculpture of a man and a winged lion above it. Jack closed the book and hurried to catch up to her. A guard was standing by the palace door. The guard wore a uniform and held a rifle. "Wait," Jack whispered. "Is he a real guard, or is that just a costume?" "I'll find out," said Annie. She walked over to the guard. "Excuse me, sir, is the ruler of Venice inside the palace now?" "Be gone, clown," the guard said gruffly. "But it's important," said Annie. "We need to talk to him about something." "I said be gone," the guard growled. "I am tired of clowns wasting my time." "She's not really a clown," said Jack, coming forward. "We're on a mission. We go, both of you, or else," roared the guard. He held up his rifle. "He's definitely not wearing a costume," thought Jack. "Okay, sorry, said Jack. He and Annie moved away from the palace entrance. "What a grouchy guy," said Annie. "He'll never let us in," said Jack. "Maybe it's time to use one of Teddy and Kathleen's rhymes," said Annie. "Maybe we should turn into ducks." "The guard wouldn't mind if a couple of ducks—" "No," said Jack. "We have to save our rhymes." "Well, how will we get inside?" Annie asked. "Patience," said Jack. "Remember—" Before he could finish, Annie broke in. "Hey, look!" 2 clowns on stilts were dancing around the guard. One grabbed the guard's rifle and tossed it to the other. "Hey!" the guard yelled. "Give that back!" "Now's our chance," said Annie. "Quick!" She ran to the entrance and slipped through the door. "Oh no, oh man," said Jack. While the guard chased after the 2 clowns on stilts, Jack rushed to the doorway of the palace and slipped inside too. Chapter 4. Rats. Jack found Annie standing behind a column in a lantern-lit courtyard. The courtyard was quiet and empty. "Everyone in Venice must be at Carnival," said Jack. "I just hope the ruler is home." "Yeah, we'll ask him if he knows the grand lady of the Lagoon," said Annie, "and we'll tell him he has to help us save her from a terrible disaster." Jack looked at his map of the palace. Several rooms were labeled Ruler's Living Chambers. "I guess that's where he lives," said Jack. We have to go up some stairs called the giant stairs to get there. The giant stairs? Said Annie. Yeah, said Jack. Listen to this. These stairs are called the giant stairs because they are guarded by two large statues of gods from Roman mythology, Mars, the god of war, and Neptune, the god of the sea. Cool, said Annie. Let's go. Jack and Annie hurried down the passageway that ran along the courtyard until they came to a wide staircase. On either side of the stairs were giant marble statues of strong-looking men. Mars and Neptune, said Jack. This is it. Come on. Jack and Annie quickly climbed the giant stairs. At the top, Jack looked at the map again. Now we turn right and head for the golden staircase, he said. Keeping an eye out for more guards, they crept down a hall until they came to a fancy staircase under a gold ceiling. There it is, said Jack. Let's climb up. He and Annie hurried up the golden staircase. When they got to the top, they froze. Another guard was slouched against the wall by the stairs. His eyes were closed, and he was snoring softly. Jack motioned to Annie, and they tiptoed past the sleeping guard to the entrance of the ruler's living chambers. Jack glanced at the map. This is it, he whispered. The door was open. Jack and Annie peeked inside. Knock, knock, Annie said in a soft voice. No one answered. They stepped through the doorway. A fire blazed on the hearth. Overhead, many candles burned brightly. The dancing flames cast shadows on a marble floor and a carved gold ceiling. I have a feeling the ruler's not here, said Annie. Maybe we should leave. Jack looked at their book. Wait, the next room is the map room, he said. Let's just take a look. Okay, but we'd better hurry, said Annie. Jack led the way into the map room. Colorful maps hung on the walls. In the middle of the floor were two huge globes. Jack sighed. I love this room, he said. Look, more lions, said Annie. She pointed to 3 paintings of winged lions on one of the walls. Why are there lions with wings everywhere? Jack looked up winged lions in their book. He turned to the right page and read, The winged lion is the symbol of Venice. Represented in paintings and sculptures all over the city, the lions stand for strength on both land and sea. As Jack and Annie looked back up at the lion paintings, they heard footsteps. The grouchy guard and the sleepy guard rushed into the room. Hi, we're looking, began Annie. There they are, the thieves, the sleepy guard shouted at the grouchy guard. I told you I heard voices. We're not thieves, said Annie. We were just looking for your ruler to ask for his help. She's right, said Jack. We have to tell him that won't admit your crime, eh? Said the grouchy guard. The worst cells are reserved for criminals like you. Move. But we, started Annie. Move, shouted the grouchy guard, raising his rifle and pointing to the door. Jack knew there were no use arguing. He took Annie's hand and led her out of the ruler's living chambers. The 2 guards walked behind them, pointing guns at their backs. To the end of the hall and down the steps, growled the grouchy guard. Jack and Annie walked quickly down the hall, then down some steep, narrow steps. They moved through a low stone corridor. The guards closed behind them. Over the bridge of signs, shouted the grouchy guard, and be sure to sign when you cross it, because you won't be coming back for a long time. Jack gripped Annie's hand as they crossed a covered footbridge to another building. Once inside, they started down a lantern-lit hallway filled with puddles. Jack's shoes felt squishy and soggy as he sloshed through the water. Halt! Shouted the grouchy guard. Jack and Annie stopped in front of a heavy wooden door. The grouchy guard opened the door and pushed them into a dark, damp cell. The door slammed shut. Jack heard a heavy metal bolt clank into place. Then he heard the guards splash away down the hall, arguing with each other. The prison was eerily quiet. It was hard to breathe in the stale cell. It was hard to see, too. Only the dim light of the hallway shone faintly through the barred window. Under the window was a wooden bench. What now? Annie asked in a small voice. For a moment Jack couldn't answer. He was stunned. Minutes ago they'd been at the bright carnival. Now they were locked in a dingy prison cell. "Look in the book," she said. Jack felt shaky as he opened their research book. He moved close to the barred window to read by the dim light. He looked up prison in the index. He found it and read aloud. The prison cells at ground level in the palace were called the pozzi, meaning wells or pits. They were dark, airless, and filled with rats. Even the government eventually decided they were too cruel. Jack heard a squeak from a dark corner. He stopped reading and looked up. He heard the squeak again. The hair went up on his neck. Was that a rat? He wondered. Was that a rat? Said Annie. The squeak came again from the dark corner. Then a squeak came from another corner. Jack heard rustling along the walls and more squeaking. Oh, man, he breathed. There were rats everywhere. I think it's time for magic, said Annie. Yup, said Jack. Definitely. He kept his eye on the dark corners while Annie reached into his backpack and pulled out Teddy and Kathleen's book. Annie read from the table of contents. Stand on water, make a stone come alive, make metal soft, turn into ducks. Annie looked up. Are rats afraid of ducks? She asked. Forget ducks, said Jack. Go back to make metal soft. That's what we need to do. You read the rhyme and I'll try to pull the bars apart. Okay, good, said Annie. Jack jumped onto the wooden bench under the barred window. The squeaking grew louder. Jack reached up and felt the iron bars. They were cold and hard and very solid. Jack couldn't imagine bending them. The squeaks were getting louder. Jack gripped 2 bars in the middle of the window and took a deep breath. Read the rhyme, he said. Annie read aloud. Iron or copper, brass or steel, brie on saw, row on wheel. As Annie finished the rhyme, the bars began to glow. They grew warmer in Jack's hands. I think it's working, he cried. Holding the bars tightly, Jack pulled in opposite directions. Slowly, the glowing bars began to stretch and bend. Jack pulled till there was an opening large enough for Annie and him to fit through. We did it, he cried. Great, hurry, hurry, the rats are coming, cried Annie as she jumped on the bench. Jack heard a chorus of squeaks from all sides of the cell. He looked down. He saw the shadowy shapes of dozens of rats. They seemed to be sniffing the air below the window. Go, go, Jack cried to Annie. Annie squeezed between the bars and jumped down into the hallway. Jack followed her. He hit the wet floor and scrambled to his feet. Come on, he cried. Jack and Annie sloshed down the watery hallway. At the end of it, they nearly bumped right into the 2 guards. Jack and Annie kept running. Hey! The grouchy guard shouted, running after them. He reached for Jack. The other guard tried to catch Annie. Jack and Annie dodged away from them. The guards crashed into each other, falling to the floor. Jack and Annie kept running. They dashed across the bridge of signs. They ran through the corridor and up the steep stone steps. This way, cried Jack. He and Annie tore down the hall, heading for the golden staircase. Hey, hey! The guards yelled from far behind. Jack and Annie bounded down the golden staircase, 2 steps at a time. They flew down the hall and down the giant stairs. They ran past the statues of Mars and Neptune and charged down the long open passageway. Finally, they dashed through the entrance of the palace and escaped into the St. Mark's Square. Chapter 5. Lorenzo. Jack and Annie ran through the square, dodging dancers, fortune-tellers, and acrobats. They didn't stop until they were hidden in the middle of a crowd watching a puppet show. As Jack tried to catch his breath, he looked around at all the pirates and animals in clown costumes. He was glad now that he and Annie were dressed in silly outfits, too. When they looked at each other, they laughed nervously. Maybe we shouldn't have skipped ahead, said Jack. Yeah, you are right, said Annie. We should have been more patient. Let's go back to the part about the painter, Tiepolo. Jack nodded. I think we should go to his house, he said. Maybe he's there after all. Maybe that clown had the wrong information. I hope so, said Annie. The clown said Tiepolo lives near the church of San Phyllis, said Jack. He pulled out their map and studied it. Okay, so we're here in St. Mark's Square, and we have to get there. He traced the route with his finger. Got it, let's go. Stay in the shadows in case those guards come looking for us. Jack stuffed the book into his backpack. Annie grabbed his hand, and together they squeezed through the carnival crowd. until they came to an alley off the square. The wind was blowing harder as Jack and Danny headed down one shadowy alley, then another. They walked between rows of tightly packed shops, cafes, and houses. As they walked farther from St. Mark's Square, the streets became less crowded. After a while, they came to a small footbridge that crossed a canal. As they hurried over the bridge, Jack noticed the water washing onto the sidewalks. "What's going on with the water?" he asked. "Let's ask her," said Annie. She pointed to a young woman locking up a cafe. The woman wore a blue mask and a lacy purple dress. Water was swirling around her high black shoes. "Excuse me," said Annie. "Do you know why there's so much water in the streets?" "Oh, there has been much rain in the mountains," said the young woman. "It all washes down to the lagoon. It makes the water very high." "Isn't that dangerous?" asked Jack. The woman smiled. "Oh, no," she said. "We often have high water here in Venice. You shouldn't worry. You should go watch the fireworks on the waterfront near St. Mark's. Everyone is going there." "Thanks," said Annie. The woman waved and went on her way. "I guess we could stop worrying about the water," Annie said to Jack. "Yeah," said Jack. But he couldn't help worrying as he saw a clump of seaweed wash past them down the alley. As Jack and Danny walked toward the church of San Felice, a bell started to chime. Jack counted the bongs. 11. Another bell started to toll. Jack counted 10 bongs. "What time do you think it really is?" he asked. "I don't understand." "Patience, remember?" said Annie. "One thing at a time. We just have to find Tiepolo's house now." Soon they came to the small church of San Felice. The square next to the church was empty except for an old man walking a small fat dog. "Good evening, little clowns," the man said with a friendly smile. "Why aren't you at the waterfront by St. Mark's Square? I'd be there myself, except my dog Rosa is afraid of fireworks." He smiled at his chubby dog. "Actually, we're trying to find the house of a painter named Tiepolo," said Jack. "Oh, he is my neighbor," said the old man. "He lives there." He pointed to a dark house off the square. "But you won't find him home." "I know, we heard he's away," said Jack. "We were just wondering if he was coming back soon." "I fear not," said the man. "Tiepolo told everyone that he would be gone for many months. But you should get along to the fireworks on the waterfront now. Everyone in Venice will be there to see them. They're quite magnificent on the last night of Carnival." "Thanks," said Jack. The old man waved. As he and Annie walked slowly across the square, the church bell began to sound. It bonged 11 times. "Excuse me, sir," Jack called. "All the clocks in Venice tell different times. Which one is right?" "None," the old man called. "That is one of the wonderful things about our city. Venice is timeless." The man laughed, and he and Rosa went inside a small yellow house. Jack sat down on a bench in the square. He put his head in his hands. Annie sat next to him. "I guess we do have to skip Tiepolo," she said. "What's the next thing Merlin tells us to do?" Jack sighed. He pulled out the magician's letter and read the next 2 lines. "At midnight 2 men will tell you the time. To the top of their tower hurry and climb." "Oh, great," said Jack. "How will we know if it's really midnight?" "The man just said none of the clocks are right because Venice is timeless." "According to Merlin, 2 men will tell us the right time," said Andy. 2 men who own some kind of tower we have to climb." "Right," said Jack. "But that makes no sense either. Who are they? How are we supposed to find them?" "We'll have to skip that part too. We're skipping our whole mission, whatever it is. A terrible disaster is about to happen to some grand lady of the lagoon, and we have no idea who she is. We don't know what the disaster is. We don't know how to find the ruler of the seas, or how to find a painter named Tiepolo, or even how to tell the right time. We're completely failing Merlin's test." "Calm down. We just have to be patient," said Annie. "Everything will make sense soon." "How soon?" said Jack. He felt cold and wet and miserable. "Very soon," said Annie. "In fact, I think I see a light now inside Tiepolo's house." She stood up. "I definitely see a light." Annie ran over to the small house off the square. She peeped through a window. "Jack," she called in a loud whisper. "Come here." Jack walked over to her. "Someone's painting in there," said Annie. Through the window, Jack saw a candle burning in a corner of the room. He saw canvases and pots of paint. He saw a boy standing at an easel. The boy was painting a picture on a large canvas. "He's just a kid," said Jack with disappointment. "He can't be Tiepolo." "So what?" said Annie. "Maybe he can help us." She tapped on the glass. The boy looked up. He carried his candle to the window and opened it. He had reddish-brown hair and big eyes. "Hello," he said. "Are you looking for someone?" "I'm Annie, and this is my brother Jack," said Annie. "We're visiting Venice, and we're hoping to find a painter named Tiepolo." "You have just done so," the boy said. "My name is Lorenzo Tiepolo." Lorenzo had a very serious manner. "You're a painter too?" asked Annie. "Yes, as you can see, I am painting right now. I help my father and my older brother with their paintings," said Lorenzo. "And when they are gone, I paint my own. I will even miss the last night of Carnival to paint. But why are you not there?" "We're on a mission," said Annie. "We just escaped from the palace prison. We got caught looking for the ruler of the seas." "The ruler of the seas?" said Lorenzo. "Why were you looking in the palace? The ruler of the seas is right here." "What?" said Jack. "The ruler of the seas is here?" Lorenzo smiled. Then he walked to a large covered canvas propped against the wall. He pulled off the cloth cover. He held up his candle to show a painting of a beautiful woman resting her hand on the head of a golden lion. A man was giving coins to the woman. The man had a bare chest, a rugged face, long dark hair, and a white beard. Behind him was a three-pronged fishing spear. "My father has been working on this painting for some time," said Lorenzo. He pointed at the bearded man. "'Tis Neptune." "Neptune?" said Jack. "He's one of the gods in Roman mythology, right?" "Yes, the ruler of the seas," said Lorenzo. "Oh, we thought the ruler of the seas was the ruler of Venice," said Annie. "We thought he lived in the palace on St. Mark's Square." Lorenzo laughed. "Oh, no, the palace is just home of our city's human ruler," he said. "The true ruler of all the seas is Neptune." "Where does Neptune live, Lorenzo?" Annie asked. "He lives beneath the water in a beautiful palace made of coral and sparkling jewels," said Lorenzo. "But only a few people can actually see Neptune." "Like who?" asked Annie. "Those with imaginations, like my father, my brother, and myself," said Lorenzo. "We have heard the waves around Neptune roar like wild bulls. We have seen his fishing spear rising high above the surface of the sea, gleaming in the moonlight." "That sounds great," said Annie. "Yeah, great," Jack said politely. "You guys must have really good imaginations." "Thanks, Lorenzo." He turned to Annie. "I'm going to look at the research book some more." Jack walked back to the bench and pulled out their book. He'd felt totally discouraged. Neptune wasn't a real person. They'd come to another dead end. Annie stayed by the window. "Lorenzo, one more question," she said. "Why is Neptune giving a gift to that lady?" "Neptune is offering the riches of the sea to Venice," answered Lorenzo. "So the lady in the painting is supposed to be the city of Venice?" said Annie. "Yes," said Lorenzo. "This is how my father thinks of Venice. She is the grand lady of the lagoon." Jack looked up from the book. He felt goosebumps on his skin. "Thanks, Lorenzo," said Annie. "You helped us a lot." "You're welcome, Annie," said Lorenzo. "Good night." Then he closed the window. "Jack, Jack," said Annie, hurrying to him. "The grand lady of the lagoon is Venus. I know. "I heard," said Jack. "Now I understand our mission," said Annie. "We have to save Venice from a terrible disaster. We have to save all of Venice."